Hi everyone! In this video, we'll be going a little bit more in depth on how we can position our bodies in a more neutral way so you can free yourself from pain and strain from playing while standing. So why do we care about how our bodies are positioned? Of course, we want a long, lengthened spine with a head that balances beautifully on top. But when we add in an instrument and a bow, that of course changes the weights of everything, and our body is forced to compensate in various ways. And that will affect how our feet work, our knees, our pelvis, our rib cage, our shoulder cape, our neck, and even our head have to behave in order to support the instrument and bow. We're going to start with the feet, but it's important to note that it's hard to talk about the feet without also talking about the knees as well as the pelvic girdle. But when we talk about the feet, we have basically three positions. You could, for example, have the feet facing straight forward. You could have the feet turned inwards like so, or you could have the feet turned outwards like a V. Let's talk a little bit about what each of these does for us. So if you put your feet inward first, and you can try this at home, okay, make sure you have something around yourself to help you balance in case you start to lose your balance. But what will start to happen is you'll notice that the pelvis starts to tilt forward. You might even feel that the posterior here is starting to stick out, and then the body compensates by having to arch the back. This is what we call lordosis, and you can see that happening here in my lower back. So we definitely don't want our feet to turn inwards. That would not be a neutral position and cause our bodies to tense in order to hold that posture position. Now, you might think that going straight forwards is a really great idea, and it's not bad. This is actually somewhat more neutral. And when we think about coming out to a V shape, this is different for people with different hips, and it really depends on your personal anatomy. But the benefits of this one are when you have the feet turning outwards, it actually will support the instrument as it is facing outwards towards the left, as well as the bow. The two metatarsals in the big toe, as well as the pinky toe, as well as the calcaneus, which is the heel of the foot, are allowing itself to support all of that structure. You may have heard a lot of Suzuki teachers talk about creating a V with the feet and then stepping to the side, and that becomes your playing position with knees swaying side to side. It's not a bad position, but the problem with that is if we go too much at a V, create a right angle, what ends up happening is the pelvis is forced outward, particularly when we step to the side. And what will happen to the pelvis is as we step out to the side, this causes a tucking in of the tailbone and therefore a flattening of the back here. If we had to just stand up, it would be simple. But the problem really comes when we add in the weight of the instrument as well as the bow. So when I have my instrument turned out to, I would like to say 10 o'clock, and we add in our bow coming down the center of the midline here, we have a lot of weight out here in this upward direction. As a result, the balance of the body is slightly off. I'd like you to try this experiment. Go ahead and hold your instrument and bow out at the tip of the bow and see which foot it's more comfortable for you to balance on. Is it the left foot? And could you hold it for maybe 10 seconds or so? Or are you more balanced when you're on the right foot? And which one do you feel your body tensing or compensating more in order to hold that position? For me, I find that if I have my body weight positioned more over my left foot, it has more balance. So when your instrument and bow are up in position, again, I like to scroll around 10 o'clock, and of course the adjusting screw of the bow around the 12 o'clock position right at the midline here. You may find that pointing your toe in between, more like at 11 o'clock, is a really nice place to place your foot. The reason for this being that the foot balances on a tripod, mainly the base of the first metatarsal or your big toe, the base of your fifth metatarsal or your pinky toe, and of course your calcaneus, which is the heel of the foot. Now that your foot is balanced on this tripod in the foot, you can feel that when you are allowing yourself to go out to the tip of the bow, you might be more balanced on the first metatarsal. Whereas when you're here and you're at the frog, you might be balanced more towards the fifth metatarsal. Additionally, there are some theories that suggest that when you play, you do want to be back on the heels. And we'll talk a little bit about that more when we talk about the knees. So the next thing that we're going to talk about are the knees. And the knees are directly connected to the hips, so we'll be talking about them in relationship to one another. Now, as you can see here, we want a really good line between the ankles, the knees, and the hips. One of the most harmful things that you can do with your posture is to hyperextend the knees or push them back and straighten them out right here. This can cause three things. First of all, if we hyperextend the knees and we actually push the pelvis forward, almost like we're going to reach forward and pick something up, what's going to happen is the body has to compensate backwards. This is like sticking the posterior out, and we talked about this earlier as lordosis. So this is one of the things that we don't want to see. The other thing that happens when we hyperextend our knees is actually our hips can rotate backwards like this. And again, this is kind of like tucking the tailbone in underneath the hips. And what this does is it flattens the back. In fact, this is actually called flat back. The final thing that happens when we hyperextend the knees is not only we can have that pelvis rotated backwards, tucking the tailbone, but sometimes the balance is such that the pelvis actually moves forward in space like this. And this is what we call sway back. So we really don't want to hyperextend the knees in any way. That's why one of the things you'll be looking for as you find your foot position is to gently sway side to side. This ensures that your knees are bent and flexible and soft. The next thing I'd like to talk about is diaphragmatic breathing. So when we breathe, we have a choice to breathe from the diaphragm, which is the muscle, which creates room here for the lungs to expand, and then of course pushes up and causes them to contract, or we can use our upper respiratory movement to create that expansion of the lungs and contraction of the lungs. When we breathe from the upper respiratory system, we end up moving our shoulders, our chest, our trapezius, a lot of things that actually end up interfering with violin and viola playing. For example, if I have my instrument set up like this and I decide to breathe from my upper respiratory system, you might see as I inhale, everything kind of rises, and as I exhale, my scroll may lower. And so this presents some interesting technical problems in the playing. If we can actually revert to going to a diaphragmatic breath, which is again, as we inhale, we feel the diaphragm lower and the belly expand. And then as we exhale, we feel the diaphragm rise. And we feel the abs and lower back contracting around the midsection. You'll notice a lot less interference with your technique. As a disclaimer, in the Franco-Belgian School of Bowing, there is a way to actually use the breath and incorporate it into your up bows and the down bows. But unfortunately, that is a little too in-depth for a video like this. So you'll have to watch that video when it comes out. We hope that you found this video informative and that it helps you to understand the various factors that lead to creating a healthy playing position while standing. If you'd like more foundational information on the Alexander technique, click this video above.